Welcome to my show, Conversations with Charles. When people come to me for coaching, it's usually for one of only a few reasons. Often, they want to change how they look. They've seen a client who's lost a remarkable amount of weight and really think that life must be perfect now for that person since weight's no longer an issue. They think that feeling more attractive and good in their own skin will radically shift the way that they experience life. While helping my clients achieve those physical goals is certainly a foundational element, what really allows for them to make the decision to change is much, much deeper. In order to change how we act, we must learn how to impact our mood without using substances like food and really learn to trust ourselves again. That means letting yourself be sad, angry, afraid, as well as happy. In losing 160 pounds myself nearly 2 decades ago, I discovered that in order to create seismic change in life, you can only change how you look if you change how you feel about yourself. When we're on the darker side of the emotional spectrum, meaningful and loving relationships are the place we can turn to weather life's storms. Ultimately, our self-image is really influenced by the people we spend time with and the quality of those connections. Many of us fall prey to using food and other substances as a distraction from really doing the hard work on the relationship that we have with ourselves and with others. I've found in working with thousands of clients that many have created a weight problem unintentionally because dealing with the unhappiness in the other areas of their life really feels overwhelming. One of those areas that many feel intimidated by is the area of intimate interpersonal relationships. Only when we have a good enough relationship with ourselves can we go to a relationship to contribute rather than take. When I started to really love myself, I attracted a woman to my life who's brought more out of me than I ever knew was there. Today, I wanted to bring on a couple who will offer lessons on love and relating and who really speak from a lifetime of experience, having been married for nearly 70 years, all the while raising kids and being successful professionally. In this show, you're going to get to listen to a conversation with this legendary Hollywood couple whose relationship has stood the test of time in one of the most difficult and temptation-laden places in the world, Hollywood. If you grew up in the 90s or you had children who did, you'll probably quickly recognize the iconic voice of the other gentleman in the conversation, the guy with the Boston accent, Mr. Bill Daniels, who many of us know as the lovable Mr. Feeny from the show Boy Meets World. Bill is a legendary actor. Having been born in Brooklyn, his mom pushed him into performing as a singer and a tap dancer at just 4. He went on to become a star, playing the father in the classic Dustin Hoffman movie, The Graduate. He returned to stage after that, taking on the role of John Adams in 1776. You might know him from his Emmy Award-winning TV performances, alongside his wonderful wife Bonnie, who also joins us today. They've been friends with the greats of Hollywood, people like Dick Van Dyke, Mickey Rooney, Adam West, Bruce Paltrow, who happens to be Gwyneth's dad, Angela Lansbury, Donald Pleasance, Denzel Washington, Kathy Bates, Gene Wilder, and Betty White, just to name a few. Behind every great man is an extraordinary partner. In Bill's case, that lovely partner is Miss Bonnie Bartlett. Her insight, her support, her constructive criticism, they're all resources that Bill credits to helping him achieve the success he's had. I feel that he and I must really be kindred souls because the love and respect that you hear coming out of him for Bonnie is exactly how I feel for my wife. The warmth, the attention, all of that you're going to hear between the two is an inspiration to me, and I think it's something we can all learn from. Bonnie grew up not far from my hometown of St. Louis. She was raised in Moline, Illinois. She went to Northwestern, where, as luck would have it, Bill had the great fortune of meeting her in an audition. She studied under and was adored by the legendary theater teacher, Lee Strasberg. One of TV's earliest soap opera stars, she won her own Emmy for her role on the show St. Elsewhere alongside her husband Bill, and was on screen with him again in Touched by an Angel, as well as on Boy Meets World. You might have seen her years ago in the Arnold Schwarzenegger movie, Twins, or more recently on one of my favorite shows, Better Call Saul. We're not only going to talk about how to have a strong relationship, but we're also going to talk about how to manage getting through life. After all, with 9 decades of life experience, they have tremendous amounts of wisdom to bring. Bill's now 91 years old and Bonnie is 89, and neither are slowing down. You'll soon hear Bill's voice on the big screen again in the upcoming Melissa McCarthy movie, Super Intelligence. I'm sure you're going to enjoy the conversation today, so pick up a copy of Bill's memoir, There I Go Again, How I Came to Be Mr. Feeny, John Adams, Dr. Craig, and many others at a local bookstore or online. I want to welcome Mr. Bill Daniels and Mrs. Bonnie Bartlett to the show. Bill, Bonnie, welcome to the show.
Well,
Happy to be here.
yes, yes, I am, and I'm glad that my wife is here alongside me because she serves as my memory bank. She'll remember things that
I remember everything.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, Crystal and I have that happen all the time, too.
It can be a bit of a burden.
She can remind you of things that perhaps you'd prefer to forget, I imagine.
Absolutely.
He has a wonderful forget mechanism.
Don't we all?
He learned that as a child. Just forget all the bad things.
I think it's something in the male species, this deletion gene that we have.
Mm-hmm.
With that in mind, as I was telling you both, I really find your marriage to be an inspiration. And I think many people today who seem to struggle with staying committed to things when conflict comes up can really learn something from that. What have you both found through the ebbs and flows of your relationship has helped you both stay so committed?
Well, I think the main ingredient in our relationship that has lasted us so long is a mutual respect. And that's terribly important. Besides that, I'm a great admirer of her talent as an actress and as a bride of mine.
Mm-hmm.
She's my mainstay, and I've just been very fortunate that I'm glad that when I first met her at an audition at Northwestern, and she was the only one there who seemed to act, and I asked her out for a drink. She said I was too short. And so I said, oh, come on. And she said, okay. And so we've been together ever since.
Beautiful. Bonnie, what's your recollection of that first interaction with Bill?
I had always, from the very first days of our freshman year, he had been in the Army, but he was a freshman with me, although he was a little older.
Mm-hmm.
But I knew he was a Broadway actor. And, of course, I was Broadway bound. So I knew, he was interesting. I never thought of him as somebody that would be interested in me or anything. But anyway, I did already have a very interested point of view in him. And that funny voice, that accent, that funny accent. You know, in the Midwest, we don't talk like that. But anyway,
no, we don't.
We don't. But those were my first recollections. But as to your other question, I think what you have to do in a relationship, first of all, you got to like the person a lot.
Mm-hmm.
You know, in spite of their things that are annoying and fault. You know, you have to really like that person, because when things happen and you want to say, "Oh, I got to get out of here," or whatever it is, you have to take a good look and say, you know, I really like him.
Yes.
And I'll manage to get through this because I really do like to be with him. I don't want to live with anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. In other words, if as you go along you find somebody in life that you like fall in love with or think is wonderful, or you know you want to be with that person, then you got a problem.
Mm-hmm.
But that's never happened to us.
In other words, what I'm hearing you say is you need to be willing to really address things as they come up with your partner.
Yeah.
If you do find that you're feeling attracted or pulled toward another relationship, that's a good indication that there's some work that needs to be done in the communication between you and that person you're committed to.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But you got to really have that. You know, I know that I've had experienced friends who have married somebody and then that person has changed drastically in the worst way. They got a problem, you know, and they have to probably move out of the relationship. If you know, when it's a very negative, that's never happened to us. We have changed, but we've always changed for the better.
And if I understand correctly, Bill, you were going through a time that you were struggling with using alcohol a little excessively. How did you guys work through that?
Oh, gosh. I don't recall. Bonnie, can you help me out?
Well, first of all, he left New York. He left the theater in New York, and he decided that lifestyle was not healthy for him or for our family. And so even though I love New York, believe me, I didn't want to leave New York, but he said, no, I want to go to California and work in film, and then, as it turned out, television, so that I can lead a little more normal life, that I can be home on weekends, I can be with my kids. I can come home every night at a decent hour, have dinner, things like that.
And with that type of transition, moving somewhere completely new, I know when I've coached a lot of couples in their relationship, being out of balance where one partner's working and the other isn't is a challenge. So, Bill, in a society, a generation that was even more male-dominated than today's society, how did you deal with those periods of time where Bonnie was really active and busy and working and you were unemployed? Did you ever find yourself angry or frustrated?
No. I was already happy to have no idea how excited she would get, even at the prospect of going on an audition.
Mm-hmm.
She just was so, up for it and everything. I'm terrible at auditions. But off she went, and I wished that she get it because I knew how much she wanted it. I had no sense of
not jealousy,
No.
Billy. I know you weren't jealous, but it made you feel bad.
Well, sure, irrespective of what was happening.
Well, that's why he at one point chose to. He got offered. Tennessee Williams actually picked him to do a road company, Cat on a Hot Tin Roof,
Yes.
and he was going to be gone for 9 months. And
wow.
Hey, that was tough. When we sat down and talked about it,
yeah,
it was tough. 9 months is a long time when you're young in a marriage,
mm-hmm.
and we didn't know what would happen. We didn't know if we would survive that. The worst times were before the children.
You two were fortunate enough to adopt 2 boys. Do you think that having children really deepened your relationship?
It certainly helped me tremendously because I loved it, and I didn't care if I ever acted again. I mean,
Wow.
I really lost interest in everything except the boys.
Mm-hmm.
They were for about, almost 10 years.
With a successful relationship, having values in common with your partner is really important. So did you and Bill both know early on you wanted a family?
Oh,
all my life I said, no, I didn't want to be married either. I was not going to get married. I was not going to have children. I wasn't going to do any of those things.
Wow.
Except an actor. I was Alice actress. Bill wanted to have a family before I did. And I think we struggled to have a child, and then we lost a baby.
Few young relationships like that survive such a loss. How did you guys pull through?
I'll tell you, it was not only a traumatic experience, but it was also a kind of spiritual experience for me. And the baby trying to live really affected me. And I just thought, I gotta be able to raise some kids.
Oh, wow.
I just wanted to have some babies and kids. I suddenly realized that that's the most important thing in life, to raise children. Because I didn't have these boys,
Yes.
but I was given these boys to raise.
Yes.
And my grandmother always said to my mother and everybody, my grandmother always said, God just loans you the children.
Mm.
They're not yours. God
Wow.
loans them to you. And that meant a great deal to me. And I felt, that's the way I felt. I've been loaned these wonderful boys, and I get to take care of them and bring them up and do all of that. And it's been like that ever since. It's such a privilege. And if you've lost one, or you can't have, then you don't know it until how bad that is until you actually have them and you have that pleasure and that joy.
How did you deal with such a major loss in life, Bill?
My thoughts went immediately to Bonnie. I wanted to be there and support her through this. Of course, it was a disappointment, but I remember her in the hospital saying, "I want a baby. I'm going to have a baby." So I knew that we would probably look around and see if we could adopt one.
So how did you feel when you finally got the call that a baby was available for you two, Bill?
Well, I hesitated because I thought, supposing I get some kind of dumbbell or something. Both boys are so superior to me intellectually that it's ridiculous. They are so bright and in every
but they're
way.
Good people. Mostly they're good people.
Yes, they are. They're terrific boys. They really are. We've been so lucky that way. Really, really lucky, and it's meant a great deal to us.
So, guys, how do you both keep your passion alive for each other at 90 years old?
Well,
Because we need each other more than ever.
Mm-hmm.
We need each other more than ever.
Yeah.
And so he needs me for things, physically and mentally, and I need him for a lot of things. So that's why.
Yeah.
We need each other more. We're together more now, of course.
Yes.
And we seem to need each other.
Yeah.
And Bill?
I don't think we've ever gotten tired of keeping company with the other one.
Yes, there's a good title, Keeping Company.
Yes.
I like that.
I know you didn't have the strongest connection with your dad growing up, Bill, and I certainly didn't either. While I knew my dad loved me, we were just very different people. How do you think that really shaped the way that you were a parent to your sons?
Well, boy, that's a good question. My life was so different from his from the beginning because of the way my mother pushed us, the two girls and myself, into show business.
Mm-hmm.
And he was just proud of us, and he was the driver. He drove us every Saturday, every Sunday over to NBC in New York, where we started performing on a show called The Corner and Heart of Children's Hour.
One of the first children's shows, yes. Uh-huh.
Yes. He was our driver. It was all children show, and we were on that for years. And it got us started in the business.
So do you think that impacted how you related to your sons?
Oh, God, yes. And perhaps in the background was my experience with my father. Well, we never really got to know each other very well. And although he was very proud and of whatever I accomplished, it was still... He was a very angry young man when I was small. And he was put into the bricklaying business when he was like 16.
Mm-hmm.
And he had the opportunity to go on with a better education, but he had to drop that when his uncle took him down in the basement and taught him how to lay brick.
Wow.
He hated it.
Wow.
He hated it all his life. And he would come home every night angry and go into the shower and be in there for almost an hour getting the cement off of himself. He just was a very unhappy man. He could have led an entirely different life if he'd gotten several better breaks than he did.
It must have really delighted him to see his son go on the way that you did.
Oh, I think he did, yes. I can remember him waiting out in the car. We were, during the summer, and I was playing in 1776, we rented a place in Connecticut, and he was there with us, and he would drive me down to the theater every night, and this was during the summer. He would wait. He'd go and have a cup of coffee or something. I don't know what he did. He always said, I had a cup of coffee and, meaning, I don't know, a nosh or some kind. And he would wait outside and didn't mind it at all, was happy.
Wow.
And I'd come out and get in the car, and he'd drive us back to our place we were renting in Connecticut. He loved being around it all, and I know he loved me, and I finally realized that I loved him too.
It's so cool to hear that you've taken so much time to reflect on your earlier life to be sure that those elements don't get really in the way of you being your best self. Have you found that that type of self-examination has been really productive and helpful?
Oh, sure. Absolutely. And I have Bonnie to thank for that because, there were two things that I had no idea that I had such a bad knowledge of. The first one was you can't teach acting. You can only learn it on the boards. Now, that's an expression that comes from very old actors from a very old time of theater. And she, of course, was Lee Strasberg's favorite and the secretary, and I just followed her in there and stuck around. And that was that.
Can you talk about that time that you did go into Lee Strasberg's class and what was really the driving force behind your decision to go in there?
Me?
Yes.
Yes. Oh well, I didn't. I wanted to keep an eye on her. I mean,
Yes.
here she was rehearsing love scenes with some other guy. Maybe sometimes in his apartment.
Yes.
I didn't believe he could teach acting. I was just there to keep an eye on her.
And if you're unfamiliar with theater, to the person listening, Lee Strasberg's a really big name. Bill, can you talk about the time that he wanted you to go up on stage and sing a song completely emotionless?
That's right. Yeah, smart ass. I didn't stand. I sat on the edge of the stage and I sang Make Him Whoopee. I don't know if you know that song.
Yes.
But it certainly wasn't his idea of the exercise, which was to sing a song and stand still and not sell it or anything. I didn't stand. I sat on the edge of the stage and sold the song as best I could. So he got me up in front one day. I don't think it was then, but that set the tone for him. So he got me up on stage once and he said, "You know something? I don't know what I would do with you in the theater. I don't know who you are." And it hit me that I was this kid who put on this theatrical facade and hadn't shown anybody anything of my real self. I've been performing when I was a kid. You smile. You don't even know that you're scared. You don't even know the pressure. You just do as you're told, and you have come out of it with this kind of false veneer.
Yes.
And so he said, I don't know who you are. And that was the beginning of my analysis, actually, was with Lee Strasberg, because he was able to strip me of all that phoniness and get to myself.
I believe dropping any pretension in life and our relationships is really critical to having a real loving connection. How important do you think that kind of authenticity and comfort in being yourself really is?
Oh, it's essential. Important, it's essential. I think certainly it has to be with an actor, because you really have to, when you get a part, I don't care what kind of a part it is, you have to be able to take that part and figure out what in yourself you can use and would be appropriate for that part. Otherwise, you're just making up a lot of nonsense. You bring that part of yourself. It's not always entirely who you are. It's just something that is within you as well that you can use in that particular part. And that's what you use. So it'll always be real in a sense that it's being issued from a part of you.
So that kind of authenticity is really power.
Yes, absolutely. Because there's some of yourself in it, always. In my case, I have, without sounding braggadocious, I have a certain sense of humor, and I can use that in almost any part I play.
Yeah, some of the things we go through as kids help us mature or develop certain gifts. That's cool to hear that you kind of developed your sense of humor out of all that adversity. But were there any traits that you kind of inherited from your parents' example that was a problem in your relationship?
Gee whiz. Bonnie, can you help me there?
When he was younger in the marriage, he could be very angry. When I fight, I don't fight out of anger, but I fight out of a need. I really have to express myself and tell him what I'm thinking. But I don't ever insist that the other person agree with me. But I also came from an abuse situation, but with my father. And so that I knew what that was. I knew what that abuse was. So perhaps there is some kind of an affinity between us that when we get into those situations where you're just being nasty to each other, mean to each other, we come out of it very fast.
So, Bill, how did you make sure that you didn't repeat your parents' mistakes? It's easy when I'm coaching my clients to see them fall into the patterns they picked up, as I was just talking with Bonnie about. So how do you catch yourself in those moments?
Well, they were an example of what I didn't want to do, you know.
You know what happened one time? In the car, Bill's mother and father were in the front. I think they had Michael, with them in front. Or maybe Michael, and I was in the back. And Charlie was talking to Irene in very nasty, nasty terms. And Michael was a little boy, about 4 or 5. And he said, and he adored his grandma and grandpa. He said, "Grandpa, I don't ever want to hear you talk to Grandma like that again."
Wow.
Charlie just, oh my God, he just froze.
Wow.
And I'm sure that he
never forgot that.
He never forgot that. That little boy telling him that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Coming from
Grandpa,
such a place of love.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes, because he adored his grandfather. He really adored him, but he said, "I don't want to hear that." Mm-hmm. I thought that was so sweet. Oh, God, I thought that was sweet.
More than sweet.
Bill, all of us often hear the voices of our parents coming through us as much as we might try to not let that happen. If you find that happening yourself, how do you snap out of that?
When I catch myself, I change it. It's easy for an actor to be angry, to tell you the truth, because it's so competitive, and and it has its hard knocks, and you have to
deal with a lot of rejection.
Yes,
and also I think Irene was determined to control the situation, control everything. And she never backed down. And so I think that made Charlie more and more angry.
Bill, you had 2 women with very strong personalities vying for your attention, that being your mom and Bonnie. How do you manage such a complicated dynamic?
Softly. Watched my step. Bonnie, for me, is very easy to get along with. She knows me. Actually, she knows me better than I know myself. And if I strayed a little bit with my temper or something like that, she was way ahead of me to put a damper on it. So there was that. My mother, on the other hand, was a tremendous influence when I was young and made me, how can I put it, very aware of what goes into a performance. And if I ever made a mistake, I would be held to it. I can remember in that episode in the car when I blew the lyric on the children's hour, she had me sing my mistake in the back of the car. She sang it and turned to my father who was driving. She says, "What's so hard about that?"
Wow.
I would have left it go at that, but then she said, "Sing it." And she made us sing it in the back of the car.
Oh, wow.
And so that was a reprimand.
I'm sorry to hear that, Bill. I'm sorry to hear that you had to go through that type of thing.
Oh, terrible. But you know what? Later on, when he was doing 1776, they put in some new lyrics in Washington or something, and he blew the lyric. And he came into his dressing room and went into the bathroom and wouldn't come out. The producers and the director came in, and they were laughing. They said, "Oh, that was so funny," and they laughed at. He didn't get it. In other words, they're laughing. They're laughing. It's funny. It's a mistake, and it's funny, and they're laughing.
It's nothing to take too seriously, in other words.
Oh, God. A mistake for him is like death. You're going to be put on the guillotine. Oh, yeah. It was terrible. It's taken him a long time to get over that. She was that way. Oh, boy.
It sounds like your mom's style of criticizing you really impacted the way you looked at yourself and your performances for years. How did you eventually let go of that kind of perfectionistic approach?
Well, I'm not really sure that it's over. I'm very critical of my work. to me, it never, it's hard for me to watch myself in a film or television.
So how do you deal with other people's feedback?
Well, I've had both kinds of reviews, bad reviews and good reviews. The bad reviews now I just laugh at.
Fantastic.
Because I'm really quite certain of myself and what I'm capable of. I mean, I remember getting a bad review when I was working in a show with Veronica Lake, if you remember that lady's name. She was a star. And she went up in a dance scene with me and the couple at the table, which include Jack and a young lady, needed a certain line for the camera to switch to them. This is live at television. And so I had to say my line with Miss Veronica Lake because she was absolutely frozen, didn't speak, just stared at me as we danced. So I had to somehow recreate her line, which was a cue to them at the table and for the camera to switch to them.
Wow.
Well, I got a bad review of this, and Veronica got a lovely review.
But I think all of the success has helped him. It hasn't completely solved the problem, but it has helped a lot. But he is amazed that people want so much from him, that people loved Mr. Feeny and so forth. It still is there, though, because he still has nightmares. Even today, he will wake up with nightmares about things like that. And one night he said to me, I don't know, I'd just rather not be me, which I thought was a profound statement at this time in his life.
Bill, it sounds like you kind of took on everyone else's expectations, starting with your mom. I know I did that early in my life, and I see my clients repeat that same classic error. It's this idea that in order to get love or to have what really should be given unconditionally, we have to be what other people expect of us.
Well, that I think is part of my problem. I mean, she was never satisfied, and I'm never satisfied now with what I do. I always think I could have done it better, but I understand that a lot of actors are that way, that they think they could do it better. They go out and try again, It's sort of a reason that allows you to do 8 a week for so long, is feeling that you can make it better. It doesn't have to be the same.
I'm really glad that you're being as open about the idea of personal satisfaction as you are, because many of the young and older people that I coach have this myth that happiness is waiting ahead for them somewhere in the future on their life timeline. I think that we all go through seasons and ranges of emotion. Would you say you've developed a better ability now to be happy as you've gotten older?
I'm happy now, to tell you the truth. I've had a long career. I've been very lucky. We're comfortable. We're not wealthy or anything, but
mainly that we've been able to support 4 grandchildren through college.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
I mean, education is really important to both of us, but particularly to me. And boy, the fact that we could do that.
Happy to do it. We don't resent it at all. I'm just so happy, and I know Bonnie is too, to be able to help them that way. And that makes a lot of things justifiable in my life.
It's really obvious how much you love your grandkids. Who had that kind of paternal influence on you growing up?
Who was the guy, the lead?
Howard Lindsay.
So he was the guy that had something to do with you in the play Life with Father, right?
He and Russell Crouse wrote the play. I got a job as an assistant stage manager. I was fortunate enough to be breaking into the role when Mr. Lindsay returned after a year or so off. So he kind of took me under his wing. I think he had no idea that he was becoming a mentor for me, but he was.
Wasn't there a time you went to Mr. Lindsay privately and he gave you some really important advice that ultimately led to you meeting Bonnie?
Yes, there was a possibility of going into a theater situation. That it was also what was that called, Bonnie? In New York.
You mean the? I forget it. But you went in. You said you were. He told you that you were going to.
I know what he told me. I'm trying to say there was a possibility of going into this learning situation in New York with a little theater.
Not a little theater.
I know it isn't, but it's something like that. And so I went in and I to his dressing room when he was making up, and I asked him. I was thinking of going to the. It was called the theater arts, not theater arts, but something like that. And he was funny. He said he was dressing, putting his makeup on. He said, "Close the door." I went over and closed his dressing room door and came back, and he said, "Don't go there. I'm on the board there. Don't go there." In other words, he didn't want me being trained the way they were being trained. He said, "What you do is you write the government for a school that has a good theater department, and you will go. You will have the GI Bill after this Army experience that you're coming up on, and you'll be able to pick out one of those schools and use the GI Bill to get through it." And that's exactly what happened.
You wanted him to get an education.
Yes, he said that way you get an education and you get the experience of having the act. And he was absolutely right. And that's how, when my sister Carol was in this play with Walter Houston, Apple of His Eye, and they were playing Chicago. When I got out of the Army, my father says, "You want to go out and meet them in Chicago?" I said, "Sure." So I flew out there, and my mother said, "One of those schools that you wrote about is up here somewhere, in a place called Evanston." And so I went up there, wandered around till I found the admissions officer and sat there. He wasn't terribly interested until he heard that I'd been on Broadway. So that led to me taking an exam, which I couldn't possibly finish with my spotty education at that point. But anyway, I got in.
And then, isn't it true they asked for your grades, but there was a bit of a hang-up there?
That was a very fortunate experience.
So once you got into Northwestern, they had to reach out to this apartment-like building that you had went to for high school, right? To your former high school teacher?
That's the one. That's the one.
Yeah, that's the one. I just make a little appearance and then say I have an appointment. Then I go down to chock full of nuts and read my New York Times and have the cup of coffee.
The New York Times educated him.
Yes, that's it.
The New York Times.
That's my Bible.
He doesn't go a day without it, but it really educated him.
Yes. So anyway, so when it came time for me to, how was it?
He called you.
Yes, he called me. He said, "You're applying for college?" With like a surprise on his voice. I said, "Yes." He said, "Well, they want me to give you your school record that you had here." I said, "Yes, they need that at the college." And he said, "Well, we had a fire here, and the record." I said, "Oh my God." But I need that for get in the college. He said, "Well, do you remember any of your grades?" Bum, ba, bum, bum. I said, "Well, yeah, I think so." Now, I didn't get greedy. I gave myself like a 92 average, but I didn't have any hope of having all that qualifications. I was a complete fraud.
And I think you knew something was up with your teacher when he asked what you got in history, right?
That's right. Yeah, and we didn't teach history. God Almighty. And here I am playing John Adams. Oh boy.
So despite all we've discussed about how your mom had an unintentional negative influence in some ways, if it wasn't for her, you might have never went to Northwestern and never even have met Bonnie.
That's right.
I think she deserves a little credit
You're
for that.
exactly right.
That's right.
Yeah,
Yep.
I would never have thought of it.
I'm sure she regretted it.
She, you know,
She didn't want him getting married to anybody.
well, she regretted my being drafted. That was for sure.
I
Anyway,
think Bill has always said that the Army saved his life.
yeah, it
How do you mean, Bill?
in the sense that my family, my sisters, my father and mother, and I were so close, not just regularly, but with the entertainment. All 3, 4 of us going out together to entertain, and in benefits all over the place, and in theaters and strange places. We were all together like a knot.
And she told everybody what to do.
Yes. And so when this came along, that I was going to be drafted, it was a big break for me. And I remember I went into, I had, let's see, was it 15 or 16 weeks of basic training in Little Rock, Arkansas. Difficult during the summer. I loved it. I was away from my family. I was in better shape than I'd ever gotten,
Yes.
you know.
Uh-huh.
And they made me an acting sergeant. My God, not a regular sergeant, but acting during basic training. And I think it was 13 or 15 weeks of basic training. And then immediately was sent, while we were in basic training, they dropped the bomb. So the war was over.
Wow.
So I was involved with the occupying forces that took over in Italy and Germany to handle all the guys who were Germans. You know, there was a big POW camp outside of Livorno, and that's where I was put in. So that was a big experience because I went to a radio station there in Livorno, and the guys who were in there during the war left, and suddenly I find myself in charge of the damn place.
Wow.
And with about 6 or 8 other guys running a radio station that was on the air from, I think it was 6 in the morning until midnight at night, and playing V-discs that they sent over or doing disc jockey work, which I did, and they did, and I had a ball, to tell you the truth.
So it kind of gave you the space you needed to become your own person, it sounds like.
That's right, exactly.
Well said. Well said.
He gave me the space.
Now, you came back, and that's when you met Bonnie, and I'm wondering, and Bonnie, maybe you can remember this very, very richly. How exactly did Bill propose to you?
Well, he really did. He courted in an interesting way. He would just. I couldn't believe this guy kept calling and going out. He had no money, but we'd go out a little bit.
Uh-huh.
He had no money. I never knew somebody that was so poor. He literally had not a dime, and I had a little allowance, so I would pay for everything. But he used to sing to me.
Wow.
We'd be sitting having a hamburger. He would sing. He would sing all these Frank Sinatra songs. He was very good. You know, I didn't know at the time that he had done all this singing because, you know, it was just a very nice voice. And he was very, it was kind of old-fashioned, I guess.
Well, it sounds like you really dazzled him, Bonnie. I mean, it sounds like you had him love struck.
I don't know why. I'll never know why. To this day, I'll never know why. He yes, from the very beginning. And
Don't know why what?
That you were so interested in me.
Oh.
Part of it probably, and then I helped him to understand what school was about. He really didn't get it. And, you know, his parents had never cared about school. There was no such thing as helping with homework or doing anything like that. I'm sure he never did any homework.
Well, we were in a classroom with a bunch of kids, and the director was picking out actors to be in a play, a terrible play called Bury the Dead. And I was this cocky kid who'd been on Broadway and in the Army, and here I am as a freshman at Northwestern, and I'm going to audition for this play, I thought. But I kept hearing these people who were just dreadful, auditioning this play, and I thought, I'm not sure I want to be in this turkey. And then the director up in the front of the class said, Bonnie, and this woman started to read, and I thought, oh my God, there's an actress. So I turned around and I looked, and here's this blonde, and I thought, wow. So I waited at the door, and when she came by, I said, hi, how about a cup of coffee? And that's what she said, you're too short.
Well, you have to understand that I had a very poor self-image because I grew up very fast. I was very big, very young.
Well, you relate very much to me. That was exactly how I grew up.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
I was this big, huge kid. And I know my parents thought I was going to be a monster. But then it stopped. But at 10, it stopped at 10. Mm-hmm. But at 10, I was the biggest child in the school. Mm-hmm. And I had this feeling of always, it went on for years in my life, and I started to dance to help it, but I always had this feeling of being huge.
Yeah, self-confidence and low self-esteem issues are something many of my clients deal with. Bill, despite all your success, can you relate to Bonnie's insecurities?
Well, yeah, I've always felt that too short to be a leading man, so I wasn't a leading man. I was a character actor.
But as a person, as a guy, no, he doesn't have that.
No, not as a person.
No, he's always known that he was attractive and that the girls liked him, and that he's never had that problem. Never.
Mm-hmm.
So this question is for both of you. What have been some of the other major obstacles throughout your 70 years of marriage?
His mother and my parents. It took us a long time to really, put them aside and where they belong and live our own life. I mean, for a long time, we did have a problem with that. Mm-hmm. And finally we felt, and when we did get rid of it, we felt, God, were we stupid? We let her do this, we let her do that, we let my mom do this, and my mother never liked Bill. My mother never liked Bill because he was too poor. And
wow.
And so she would say, don't you want to divorce him? And things like that.
Oh, my goodness.
But then when he started making money, she loved that. Oh, did she love that?
Wow.
Because my mother, yeah.
Bill, how did you keep from letting that hostility from Bonnie's mom really get to you?
Well, because we never spent that much time out in Moline with her mother, and I was having fun just being in a Midwest town like that, where they had spent a great deal of time out at the country club, which I really loved. I'd never seen a country club before.
You've never been in a country club?
No. And so I loved that whole part of it. So I could ignore whatever her mother was feeling.
Yeah, you laughed at her. You really did.
That's a wonderful approach.
You laughed at my mother.
Oh, yeah. Well, she was funny until I started making money, and then one day she looked over across the table at me as I was leaving. She said, "Bill, I love you." And I thought, by God, I've made it.
Well, she just loved it. Then when he was doing St. Elsewhere, it wasn't me. She would just say, "That's my son-in-law." She would tell people when she'd go to the beauty parlor or someplace, and she'd brag about Bill.
Wow.
Not me, but Bill. Isn't that funny?
So, Bill, did your guys' parents get along?
Well, they didn't spend a hell of a lot of time together.
The two that didn't get along were Bill's father and my mother. Oh, were they funny. They both couldn't stand each other, and it was quite obvious.
Mm-hmm.
He thought she was such a snob, and she thought he was low class, a bricklayer, And so the two of them, and they both were, Charlie could say, that his son had done all of this and stuff, and Mom, I was okay, but it's they were very funny. They were very funny. It was very obvious.
One thing I really admire about you, Bill, is that when women didn't really have the respect or rights that they have today, you took a stand when you really didn't believe Bonnie's boss was paying her fairly. Can you talk about that?
No.
It turned out so well.
Well, I thought, she wasn't getting paid enough, and she wasn't. And so she didn't have an agent, did you, Bonnie?
Not at that time, no.
So I thought I should act as her agent, and I went to the producer, and this was her third or fourth year in this show, and I demanded I said, I think she should have a raise. He said, oh, really? What kind of a raise? I said, by $1,000. And he looked at me.
And this is in the 50s, right? This is in the 1950s?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, he looked at me and he said, no way.
No, he said, how much are you making?
Yes, so he said, how much am I making? Which was what, zero?
$75. You were in Zoo Story.
Oh, I was in Zoo Story.
He was making $75 a week.
And we started out getting $75 a week, and when it was such a hit, they raised it to $100 a week.
Wow.
So, yeah. Anyway, it led to her leaving the show.
He fired me.
He fired. After my demanding, he fired her.
Well, at least you had a really good intention behind all of that. With dealing with my younger clients, a lot of them struggle or have trouble juggling their romantic relationship, their career, and being a parent. How did you guys pull it off so well?
Well, that's because I didn't work.
Yeah.
Very, very little.
Yeah.
I stopped going. If somebody called me, I'd say, no, I have to go Christmas shopping.
Wow.
You don't do that. I mean, you just don't do that.
She was the happiest mother I've ever seen. And she was able to turn her back on her career and spend her time with the kids.
What a
happily.
blessing. What a blessing.
Happily.
Yeah.
So,
and I didn't know it. As I say, I discovered it, but I didn't know it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the way with life. You don't know anything, really. You just discover things.
Having both lived about 90 years, what would you say to people who put achievement, financial wealth, and their individual success ahead of their own health, their relationships, and families?
Well,
That's a very tough question.
I would say to them, you better enjoy this recognition you're receiving, because it will end. Mm-hmm. And then you'll have to go on with yourself and look for something else. And
that's true. It's like sometimes the kids, get into such trouble, and it's because they somehow have to, at an early age, be themselves and know who they are and maintain that, and it has nothing to do with the fact that somebody paid you a lot of money to do something.
Mm-hmm.
That it's yourself that matters and what you're enjoying and getting out of it.
To live a fulfilling and rich life, what has your life taught you is most important? And I'll start with you, Bill.
Most important is trying to keep active and interest and not get too bored. I've accomplished quite a lot, actually, without becoming a huge star or anything like that. I never really wanted that anyway. I never once in my life thought I should be a star. So, you've accomplished what you set out to do, or what was given to you to do, fairly adequately. And I feel comfortable with having accomplished what I have accomplished. We've received a certain amount of recognition. We've got Emmys to prove it, now I'm fine. I'm 91 years old. I'm finished acting. I'm retired. Everybody, well, not everybody, but certainly every casting lady in town knows exactly how old I am. And so I I know that I won't be working, and that's fine too, because I've worked all my life, really.
What about for you, Bonnie?
I would say the most important thing is education. And I don't mean formal education. I just mean learning something. You got to always be learning something. Mm-hmm. You always have to. I don't care what it is. It can be gardening. It can be tennis. It can be anything. If scholarly traveling is education. Certainly being a good citizen now, more important than ever. Mm-hmm. Being a good citizen, paying attention, voting, and paying attention to what's going on. And and then in your own locality, of course, supporting anything that is of an educational value.
Bill, what or who has been the greatest teacher in your life?
Well, I would say being married to Bonnie.
What's the trait you admire most in her?
Well, she's very forgiving, So.
Do you believe in soulmates, Bill?
Well, first of all, I take exception to the word soul, mm-hmm. because that's something in somebody's mind. It's sort of like what people believe in heaven. Well, they believe in heaven in their mind, Mm-hmm. I'm a lapsed Catholic that I came away really hating religion, and the way it taught your sins of the flesh, for instance, mm-hmm. Things like that. I can't abide it.
So how do you feel about it, Bonnie? Do you believe in soulmates?
One of my therapists, when I said something about Bill, and this is a psychotherapist, and I said, I just don't understand why. It was at a low point or something, and I said, I don't understand why we're together. And she says, I think it's just karma. It's your karma. Isn't that an odd thing for a therapist to say? And I thought, she's right. It's just that we happened to meet, but it was like it was meant to be.
The way I look at it, Bill and Bonnie, is that everything does happen for a reason, and the reason is for us to grow emotionally, spiritually, psychologically, and relationally.
Yes, that's right. Growth. Well, that's a good word. I call it education. You call it growth. And I agree. It's the same thing.
So for the person or couple that's listening who wants to make their relationship the best it can be and as long-lasting as yours has been, what do you guys have to say?
Just to take the journey and see how it goes. And I hope you're lucky, and I hope it works out. And
Bill, what do you want to add?
Yes, well, it's... when a relationship begins, it's hot and heavy on romance and so forth. That fades out. You really have to be happy with each other. And as I've said before, to me, it's a matter of respect. To respect the other person, their desires, their wishes, and you have to work it out with your desires and your wishes. And to that point, you've got a successful marriage. And that's what we've had. And I have no regrets. I don't think Bonnie does either. And here we are now.
So, Bill, you've watched the country grow and go through a lot of changes. How do you feel about how divided our country seems to be right now? And what do you think can be done about it?
Well, I'm reading right now a book of John Meacham's. Bonnie, what's the name of that book now? Where is it?
It's in the bedroom.
All right, I'll go get it.
I'll get it.
Oh, all right. I'm reading a book of John Meacham's because I'm so concerned about the Trump administration. Here is a man who is totally inadequate in every way of being the president, temperamentally, intellectually, every way. And after Obama, who is my hero, this is a shocker. And I just worry about getting through with this man.
Interesting. Bill just said that he doesn't like the word soul, right?
Yes.
And the John Meacham book is called The Soul of America that he is recommending. So you see, isn't that fascinating?
A man of paradox.
Kind of soul.
No, it's the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
No, I understand what you mean. Out of all the presidents you've seen over your lifetime, who's been your favorite?
Obama. by far.
And you've lived through many administrations.
Oh, yes, yes. Certainly I was too young, but obviously Roosevelt was a wonderful president.
Mm-hmm.
And I grew up with a father who hated Roosevelt.
Yes, who thought he was a maniac or something. Anyway, we grew up adoring FDR, and Truman was all right, although I don't know if I would have dropped the second bomb on Nagasaki. But after that, I'm at a loss until I get to Obama.
So if your phone rang
Yeah.
and someone from the current administration was on the line and wanted you to give your best advice to our president, what would you tell him?
Resign.
Wow, you really feel strongly about that. Do you think that growing up poor influences how you feel about this whole situation?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
So changing gears just a little bit,
Yeah.
because I don't want this to be too polarizing. Both of you grew up in theater, and it's been my experience having lots of friends that are actors and actresses. They're some of the most loving and accepting and appreciative people I've ever seen. The spirit of theater is just absolutely awesome. I'm wondering, have you seen theater as kind of a platform for our society to work out conflicts and challenges that we're encountering as a people?
Yes, I think so. I think if you look at something like the Hamilton, look at that play and the success of that play. Wonderfully. We met him because he was a fan of Bill's.
Lin Miranda?
And Lin Miranda, he's a great guy.
Yes.
And he's trying to help Puerto Rico. He's going to go do his show now down in Puerto Rico.
So what do you guys think we could do to bring that spirit that the theater has of love and unity to our country?
Well, when you're talking about the theater industry, there is a sense of comradeship,
Yeah.
Respect for what goes into it, and the talents of others, and the difficulties in the life, the competition, so forth and so on. On the general stage, you've got wealthy people and really poor people. You've got a split that doesn't exist in the theater world. And it's not healthy. I don't think the government is doing anything to help.
Yeah, that can really feel discouraging to any of us when we feel like change is something that is much bigger than us. But I always have taught, and I really believe in my heart, change starts with any one person. Any of us can do something by acting loving or kind to the people next to us to make a difference. You had a really special experience when you were, I think, 8 years old, and you wrote a letter to Bill Robinson, right? A famous tap dancer. Can you talk about that?
Well, it's one of the highlights in my life, actually. I was a tap dancer, and really then doing a lot of tap dancing with my sister. I was always a better tap dancer, and she was always the better singer and personality. She just big grin on her face. They loved her anyway. So Bill Robinson, when I saw the Shirley Temple pictures in which he played a leading role, became my hero.
And this was an African-American man, for those that are listening that don't know. And I think his stage name was Mr. Bojangles, right?
Right.
That's right. That's Mr. Bojangles. He's a black man, elegant man, and an elegant dancer. And so I was about 8 or 9 years old, and I wrote him a fan letter. And my mother sent it off. I don't know where she found out where to send it, but at any rate, it got to him. And he wrote back, and he gave me advice about my dancing and keep trying and keep studying and work hard. And then he invited us to the Cotton Club, not the one up in Harlem, but the one down on 52nd Street in Manhattan, where he was performing.
I can still hear how excited you are about it, Bill. It's absolutely beautiful.
Oh, my God. And we went, and there they reserved it. It had a thrust stage that was lifted, and we sat right next to the lift, and my head just came up over the thing, and he was in the Cab Calloway in his orchestra, and Mr. Bill Robinson, and after he performed, he came over and leaned down and shook my hand, and he said, "This is for you." And he started this tap, which I since have named relaxed effort. A tap with one toe, and then the other toe, and he looked at me, and he did it all the way across the stage and off. And
What a memory!
I was just bleary-eyed with admiration. I mean, God, he was wonderful. And my mother had only had ginger ale for the two of us for the whole evening. And then when she asked for a check, I said, "No check. It's Mr. Robinson's. You're a guest of Mr. Robinson." And I thought, damn, I could have had a hamburger.
You guys are extraordinary. I just want to say thank you both so much.
Okay.
Well, thank you, Charles. You ask good questions.
Yes.
So in closing, Bill, for the person who's listening who's really been impacted, perhaps when you were in the role of Mr. Feeny or another major role that you've played, what words of wisdom do you have for that person?
Yeah, dream, try, and do good.
Oh, that's awesome, Bill. Thanks so much again for all your time this afternoon, guys.
Okay.
You've been listening to Conversations with Charles. If you're struggling like I once was, please feel free to contact me at my website, charlesdangelo.com. Thanks for listening. Tune in next time, and most importantly, love fiercely.